Early on when this discussion started, or I think we started last year to some degree, there was talk about banning this and banning that, and this bill doesn't do that. What it does is establish a best practice, or it will establish a best practices template while neonics still may be useful and desirable in certain circumstances, but used in such a way that it doesn't actually harm pollinators, which of course is a negative, it would be a negative and unwanted result. Through you, Madam Speaker, on Section 5, starting in line 57, we call for the establishment of a Pollinator Advisory Committee from the staff of our agency, the Connecticut Experimental Station. Through you, Madam Speaker, is that going to be, are those going to be paid provisions? Is this going to be additional work? Is this going to be additional folks? Or is this going to be reassignment of some of the folks we already have on staff? Through you.
Representative Albus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And through you, there are already 3 or more folks within the Connecticut Agriculture Experiment Station that are doing work on bees and pollinators. So this is more of a reassignment of what these folks are already doing to ensure that they're communicating with the legislature and informing us as to what the latest science is, what the latest best practices are, so that we can implement them legislatively if need be.
The conversation about the varroa mites was actually one of the things we did learn when we started looking at what and whether to do about neonics at the beginning of the session, with the expertise, again, that we already have on staff, where they basically reported, well, neonics is only part of the problem. These mites, in fact, may be an additional, if not the substantial cause of the colony collapse disorder. So the fact that we were able to discuss it, learn about it, and include it in this bill, I think is a good thing and something that everyone should be pleased it was actually captured. Here it is in this bill, and you've heard me speak about this in other bills. But here again, if you look at both sections 9 and 10, we're adding language that's hopefully going to improve our condition and our situation here in the state of Connecticut with our environment and otherwise to a federal construct in order to get potential funds under federal law pursuant to certain rules described by federal law, where if you look at some of this language, we're going to be holding the United States of America harmless depending on what may or may not happen under that construct. Again, I think it's unfortunate that so many bills and so many laws that we've passed here since I've been up here for these 6 years continue along a path of divesting ourselves of the control of our authority and our money to control our own environment and our own well-being. But it is what it is. So for the purposes of this bill, I obviously have my name on it and I support it. But I think it's something we need to start keeping aware of, because here we go again. We can't even control, or we can't even decide what we want to do or not want to do about pollinator health without having to hop into a federal construct to get back some of our own money, which I think is unfortunate. That being said, Madam Speaker, Section 11, this, to me anyway, I think is probably one of the most important sections of the bill, if not the most important section of the bill. While farmers and folks in the agricultural industry may or probably already know about neonics and have some concept about what this bill may or may not do, especially with the best practices, the average homeowner probably does not. While some folks are aware of what colony collapse disorder is, I think the average homeowner probably just, it's sort of words they hear in the back of their mind. So typically what ends up happening, and we've seen this in other environmental arenas, whether it's phosphorus or other things getting spread, is while you may have a perfect set of regulations for industry, the average weekend warrior is spreading chemicals and insecticides in a fashion that could, when combined with their neighboring weekend warriors, actually does more harm to the environment than some of the agricultural industrial stuff. So I think it's important that we do create and disseminate some citizens' information, because that is in fact where I think the bulk of the problem may in fact be solved. Through you, Madam Speaker, if we could, well, before I ask a question, I note again Section 14 falls back into the same construct I mentioned before. The Commissioner of Transportation may, to the extent federal funds are available for such purpose, plant vegetation that includes pollinator habitat, including but not limited to, et cetera, et cetera. When the bill came through committee, we actually had put a provision in, I can't remember if it was Representative Minor's amendment or Senator Chapin's, that we required the Commissioner of Transportation to plant pollinator habitat. But here again, we're going to back off that to some degree anyway and say, well, to the extent we can get some of our own money back from the federal government, we'll do it then. I think it's another example, I think, of how we've become beholden to our federal government when, in fact, a lot of these things should stay in our control. That being said, I know the gentleman and I spoke offline. There are some funds available here. So the good news is, hopefully this will actually happen. Thank the gentleman for his work on the bill, his work on this issue, both before session and during session. As Representative Albus mentioned, a lot of work was done on this too by Senator Kennedy and Senator Chapin. I think this is an important step in the right direction. I think this is a good example about how sound environmental stewardship can work in tandem with agricultural development and industry. And I hope this thing progresses in the path that we anticipate that it will. So I urge my colleagues' support, and I thank the Chamber for its time.